I'd like to thank everyone for coming, taking the time out of your day to show up and be here. This is really a time for us to kind of showcase some of the things going on behind the scenes and you to see what your union is doing for you. Before we get started, I want to take the time to read some of the names of some of our fallen colleagues this year and kind of take a moment of silence at the end of it to reflect on some of the things that are important to us and in our time with them. Pat Haggerty, Paul Schuline, Jeff Love, Russell Maynard, Jason DeGroot, Kit Teeter, Dean Green, and Bryan O'Rourke. Too often we get caught up in the day-to-day of our lives, negotiations, quality of life, the contractual language, what's going on with catering. And I think it's important we take that time to reflect upon what's important, upon those that we've lost, and kind of reevaluate why we're here. So to that note, I wanted to take a moment to thank the ALPA staff, the volunteers, and most importantly, the membership that stood up during our fellow brethren that have since passed during their families' times of needs. There's been a significant amount of effort behind the scenes on everything that's occurred, from American airline pilots allowing one of our deceased crew members to sit up front in the jump seat for his last flight, to members spending hours behind security waiting for widows to come in, to cooking meals for them. So it's been truly eye-opening and refreshing to see us come together to be what this really should be. So what are we doing here today, and what is the Joint Council meeting? Well, the Joint Council meeting is kind of predicated upon we have 3 Memphis local executive councils required to meet 3 times a year by the Constitution and bylaws, and it's just a better use of our funds to do it at the same time, and so we put on this Joint Council meeting at the very start of these local council meetings so that you can see what's going on behind the scenes and we can engage the members. One of the things that we did this year was a joint council brief. I think it was the first time it's been done. We live streamed it. We had LEC 7, LEC 26, and then the Oakland rep on the live stream. It was really neat to do. The company did their town hall at the same time, and we had half the amount of live streamers watching ours as the entire company watching their town hall. So it was great to see you guys involved with ALPA in that way. And I think the total views actually exceeded what the company did. So we look forward to doing that. Again, I believe we're going to try to do it in October. I'm going to certainly invite the other councils to do it with Council 26. But that's coming up. So I keep talking about these councils. Just real quick, this may be a little bit into the weeds for some of you, but just a quick recap. We have 9 blocks, block reps here in Memphis. There's Block 11, and Mick, if you'd stand up. Mick is your Block 11 rep. He's an instructor, and the Block 11 is kind of the black sheep of it, with the instructors being subset out, not seniority based. After that, we have Edgar Irizarry, sorry. He's your Block 1 rep. And just of note, it says seniority range 1 through 655 here. Every July and now every January, since we just passed a resolution to do that, we have a block realignment. So you may be in block, well, I guess it doesn't work for Block 1, but you may be in Block 2 or 7 now, but actually on July 21st, that realignment should be posted to the website, and you could shift blocks and shift councils. So just keep an eye out for that. We had to delay that. We have some pilots that continue to do recalls in LEC 22, and we didn't want to shuffle around the entire block system and confuse people before we went in for a recall, and we also had some policy things we had to do with that. So Block 2 is Tony Cutler. Tony is actually not here. He's back in the sim. He's coming back to line, so we're excited to see him be able to finish out his career actually flying. Block 3 is the second best haircut in the MEC, Mr. Matt Workman. Block 4 is Captain Chris Comer. Block 5 is Captain Chris Turner. I'm the Block 6 rep, Brian Watson. Block 7 is DeLorean Langford. And then Block 8 is our lowest seniority. He's where the new hires go, and that is Mr. JT Gomez, right here. after we get to Block 8, those after that represent the outstations. So we'll talk about those for a second. There we go, we already hit it. I guess we could talk about the councils first. So Council 7 is made up of Blocks 1, 4, and 8. You can see that. This is all online. I think everyone's pretty familiar with that, with everything that's been going on. Council 22 is 2, 5, and 7. Again, I think everyone's pretty familiar with all this information. And then I'm the chair 26 with Blocks 3, 6, and 11. So Anchorage, it's a new rep, Shane Bowman. Shane's in the back. He just came on. It's his first MEC meeting. We're happy to have him. Council 12 with, I think, 45 pilots is Mr. Woody Clark. Still hanging in there, but the MD is coming back. 40. Okay, that's good. That's good. Council 13 is the ASL block. I'm sorry, Block 13 is the ASL block, Mr. Tony Miles. And then you've got Block 14, Captain Tim Fingers. It's growing. Oh, yeah, we hope so. And then last but not least is the Oakland rep, Mr. Darren Holmes. With us today, we've got the embassy officers. This is Captain Jose Nieves, which I think everyone knows. First Officer Connor Wilm, where are you at, Connor? And then new Secretary Treasurer is Cliff Camomile. The Executive Assistant Administrator who works a lot behind the scenes is Mr. Chris DeAugustine, just so you guys can put some faces to it. And then we've got Captain Bill Secord, who's the Executive Vice President for the FedEx MEC. All right, so guest speakers today. So I'm gonna get off the stage and let them come up and speak. We're gonna start off with the MEC chair. Then we're gonna do a RCO brief with Mr. Bill Secord. Sal Infante is the Scope Committee Chairman. His committee has a presentation for us today. Rob Bassett was kind enough to come in and give us a fatigue risk management brief. And then their pro stance chairs, Mr. Nick Richardson, who's now over here, is gonna give us a brief at the end of the day. So with that, I will turn it over.
I want to first say thank you to the MEC for giving me the opportunity to come and speak to you today. I also want to say thank you for you showing up on summer vacations, but you're still here. The people that are joining us online, we certainly appreciate their involvement. But I also want to say thank you to the guys, our pilots that are flying today, and they're delivering the Purple Promise. Every time they fly, they make sure that the FedEx experience is an outstanding one, except that the company continues undermining the fundamental values in which FedEx was founded on. So I want to thank you for your engagement and your professionalism as we chart this new course for the union alongside the company. I stand before you here today in a very pivotal point of our union history. We're fast approaching 1 year. July 24, 2023 was the day that we had the results and we had a failed TA. We had a failed agreement. I'm gonna say that again, 1 year. And here we are today. That day, I'm sure we all recognized that we were in uncharted territory. To make matters more challenging, we have our peers of other airlines delivering substantial gains through the contract negotiations with new labor contracts. Us, in here, emotions were high, and emotions rule our crew force. And that was the beginning of the transformation for us. After 29 years with the company, I have to face the same thing that you faced. I have to come to grips and accept that the company actually has changed and that we were in a new path that we needed to take in order for us to be able to have a contract that actually delivers and acknowledges all the sacrifices that we put for the company throughout all these years. The airline industry was booming, but FedEx is an inflection point. There's a major strategic transformation that is happening, and as of June 1st, we're no longer FedEx. We're one FedEx. It's driving towards an integrated product solutions Air operations is going also through a major transformation in over 20 years. As a matter of fact, that transformation had not happened since the first major contract in 2001 with the United States Postal Service. The questionable exit of that contract, coupled with changes under this Network 2.0, and our latest threat, Tricolor, is actually going to challenge the way we do business going forward. But frankly, the reason why I'm standing here today is because, and I said this before, the Purple Promise is broken. The Purple Promise has put into questions in all this process. The company is clearly prioritizing shareholders' bottom line, money, over the foundational values in which FedEx became the sensation that is today. You guys remember people, service, profit? Remember that? Well, last year alone, FedEx returned $4 billion to shareholders, and they expect to return $3.8 billion in fiscal year 2025. Shareholders, not you, not me, not any other employee, not even reinvesting in the company, not frontline workers that delivered the Purple Promise. Where is PSP? We have not seen a raise since November of 2020. That's 44 months and counting. I don't know about you, but my product and your product is not stock. It's not money. It's people. And it's these people that make the incredible global network operate. And it is time for FedEx to once again come to that realization. In his book, The World on Time by James Weatherby, outlines the 11 management principles in which FedEx was founded. It was a winning combination that Fred Smith put together. And that's what we were accustomed to. But unfortunately, that's not what we have today. I'm here to tell you it's okay. It is okay. Because that's what corporate America does. That's what professional management team does. They actually chase profits to appease Wall Street. And that's why we have trade unions. And that's why we need unions, like ALPA, to help us through this process. ALPA is here to protect you, the pilot, the employee, the people that actually generate these profits. We have been through 2008 debacle, TNT, 4A2B, and now One FedEx. Just another challenge that we have to get used to and learn from, so we'll be able to manage from here forward. And that's not counting the frenzy of COVID. Therefore, as a result of all these challenges, I'm here to tell you that MEC is all in. We had the opportunity to serve the landscape, reorient ourselves to pace the corporate transformation, and make better decisions. Simply stated, they change, unequivocally change, and we shall change too. In this process, we fully leverage ALPA as our labor union. We are leveraging their experience, their expertise, the solidarity of over 71,000 pilots in 41 United States and Canadian airlines, that they're fighting to maintain the rights of our airline pilots. ALPA provides us with the framework and resources to advocate effectively in your behalf, especially against this company transformation. Recent outcomes confirm that the merits of pardon bargaining in industry-leading contracts and the power of the 71,041 airlines of solidarity shape national legislation. ALPA efforts are combating the corporate agendas by informing policymakers and other stakeholders of the truth of the matter, not from their perspective, from your perspective, the pilot. It is this kind of advocacy that ALPA brings that we need to stand behind in solidarity. I have to be frank. A failed TA is not a desirable outcome. But for us, it's actually an opportunity because they have given us the time to do a strategic transformation. And we have to because the company is transforming. Still today, most of you probably cannot define what one FedEx is, what Drive is, what Network 2.0 is. And like I said, our nearest threat, tricolor. The reality is that our present does not reflect the future, and what got us here is not going to get us to where we need to go. We were a destination airline, and I have to tell you, we're no longer. We need a union to ensure a sustainable future, one that looks for the entire spectrum of the membership, those nearing retirement for a long, storied career, and those aspiring to have that long, storied career. The MEC, the officers, and our ALPA support staff are committed to pace change and represent you all the way. We openly acknowledge, and yes, we openly acknowledge that we must transform alongside the company to remain relevant. What you do today, what I do today, what we do today is what's going to make the difference. So we all have a decision to make. Alongside the over 5,500 FedEx ALPA pilots and leveraging all the significant resources ALPA National brings, we can make this difference today. We know the company is trying to do everything to create more profits and gain efficiencies. As a matter of fact, they tell us at every opportunity they have. But on this one, the company have decided to leave us behind. It's hard to accept. It's not what we're used to. It's not what we're accustomed to. But they did. And that was a decision. There was thought put out behind that decision. They had not been forthright with their plans for a long time. And definitely since we started negotiations in 2021. It's also a fact that there's clear standards in the industry for our 4 pillars of the contract: scope, retirement, compensation, and quality of life. We're simply asking the company to be transparent in the negotiations to achieve an equitable outcome along the lines of all the commercial airline industry's standards that have been set in the last few years. After all, FedEx claims that we're the best pilots. To include the FAA and the NTSB always applaud us. Well, we definitely need to be delivered a consumer contract along those lines. As I conclude my presentation to you today, I have to tell you there is a lot of things that have changed, and change is hard. And there's more change coming your way. They change, we change. But in all that change, there's one thing that remains constant, and that is your future. And your future is not represented by your corporation. Your future is being represented by your union. I am here to tell you that just like the MEC, I am here all in to be able to deliver a contract that you deserve. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Those that don't know me, I'm Bill Secord. I'm the ALPA National Reduced Crew Operations Committee Chair. And I was asked to come speak with you today about reduced crew operations. And I've got a presentation here that usually takes an hour, and Bryan was kind enough to give me 10 minutes. I appreciate the 10 minutes. It's an important topic that we need to discuss. And so I bring it up just to say I'm going to speak quickly. I need you to stay with me, and I'll be around here later today for questions when they come up. Thank you. I got 15. I appreciate that. Anytime we have a conversation, we need to make sure everybody's on the same page, right? We're talking about the same thing. So let's start with the definition of terms. Reduced crew operations, or RCO. RCO is anytime you're taking a pilot out of the cockpit, a very general term, okay? Extended minimum crew operations, or EMCO. This is an Airbus term. Airbus wants to take RFOs out of the cockpit. So this would be 2 pilots, me and an FO, flying from here to Paris with no RFO. SPO or SIPO, SIPO is a European term. It's single pilot ops, pretty simple. Anytime there's only 1 pilot in the cockpit. SPPO, single pilot where the second pilot's optional. Okay, again, an Airbus term. It's during a period of proof of concept. Okay, we'll talk more about that later. And then finally, autonomy. I think everybody knows what autonomous means. It means nobody's on board at all. So let's jump right into it. This is a timeline of Airbus information of what they've done and what their goals are. So you can see there's 2 different timelines. There's a dark blue one for single pilot ops and the light blue one below for extended minimum crew operations. Let's look at SPO first. You can see there on the far left that Airbus had familiarization meetings with EASA, the European FAA, and the US FAA back in early to mid 2021. If you move to the right, you can see that Airbus planned on having a single pilot where a second pilot was optional. They wanted that certification mid-23. They're admittedly behind schedule on that. Their goal is to have a single pilot freighter by 27, mid-2027. Now hear me there. Single pilot freighter, 2027. With an ultimate goal of early to mid-2030s for a true clean sheet single pilot airplane for passengers and crew. Passengers and cargo. The goal is not just cargo. The goal is to radically change the way we operate. It's going to be passengers and cargo. Now you look down at the bottom for extended minimum crew operations, it's a fairly similar timeline. The same familiarization conversations were had in mid-2021. Their goal, Airbus's goal, was to have rulemaking at ICAO going on right now and coming to an end. And unfortunately for them, ICAO really didn't have a whole lot of interest in this. They still don't. It received everything at Airbus receives a rating, and they start with the highest rating first and move downwards. Well, this received a very low rating because, frankly, it's a bad idea. And so Airbus had to reevaluate, adapt, and what they decided, they teamed up with EASA to do a rulemaking this summer. And so they want to do this international rulemaking, get a bunch of industry partners together, do this rulemaking. And you know, the obvious question there is, well, why would EASA want to do rulemaking for EMCO, for removing RFOs from the cockpit? Because the EU is not big enough. It doesn't require an RFO to fly from one side of the EU to the other. Well, they're going to do the work. They're going to drop it on ICAO's desk and expect ICAO to rubber stamp it, okay? Fortunately, we have some friends that are going to be on this rulemaking committee. The biggest one, the US government. The FAA is going to be part of this. The White House, the DOT, and FAA have all said that we need 2 well-trained, well-rested pilots in the cockpit at all time. And another friend of ours is Boeing. Boeing's on board with us as well. They feel like this technology is nowhere close to being ready to be used. They admit it's going to be at some point, but that's many, many, many years down the road, and they're pushing to stop this as well. And so I want to be clear, single pilot operations. This is a real threat that's going on right now, okay? You can see the timeline. I fly with guys all the time and say, oh, it's not going to happen during my career, not going to happen during my lifetime. It's happening now, okay? And FedEx has told Airbus, if you can make a single pilot freighter, we will buy hundreds. We'll buy hundreds. So, how? The how. How's Airbus going to do it? Well, PFM. It's pure freaking magic. You as the pilot in a single pilot airplane is going to taxi out onto the runway, on the center line, and you're going to hit the auto flight tile. And then you're not going to touch another thing. until the airplane lands at its destination on the center line, okay? Now, they're gonna make you feel important, make you feel loved, you put the flaps up, put the gear up, but other than that, you're not touching a thing. Now, if you become incapacitated, the airplane's been monitoring you, so it'll divert, no problem. How are they gonna do that? Not really sure. I don't think they're sure of it either. But if you reverse the roles, what happens if the airplane becomes broken? Well, that's why you're there. You're gonna put on your Superman costume, you're gonna save the day. So, having not flown the airplane for who knows how long, you're gonna be expected to hand fly the airplane, run the QRH, deal with whatever adverse conditions have occurred because of the emergency, talk on the radio, maybe use ACARS, SATCOM, and land the airplane safely. Now that's in spite of the fact that the FAA back in November 22 came out with an advisory circular that said that our hand flying skills are becoming atrophied because we don't hand fly enough. So now we don't fly at all and we're expected to hand fly at altitude and deal with all this? Not a great idea. That's the how, here's the why. Why is Airbus interested in RCO? Well, it depends on who they talk to. When they talk to regulators, they talk about better rested pilots. They admit that here in the United States and Europe, we have pretty good rest rules compared to the rest of the world. But the rest of the world, they're really lagging. So if you've got 2 pilots on a long haul flight instead of 3, you're dividing that rest period into 2 instead of 3, right? So you're getting more sleep. Of course, they forget the fact that the guy that slept first has been up much longer. We don't have to worry about that. But what they're really saying is, instead of fixing the problem, we're going to spend hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, redesign an airplane to have better rested pilots. Fundamentally change how we operate in the national and international airspace system. My suggestion would be, maybe take a fraction of that money and lobby ICAO and change the rules. That would make more sense to me. And when they talk to regulators, they always talk about how the new airplane, the new system, is going to be as safe as our current system. And we're not going to get into this, but I'm just going to say, as safe has never been acceptable with new technology in our national airspace system. It's always needed to be safer. If we had that as safe mentality back in the 40s, we'd be crashing airplanes every day. As safe is unacceptable. It needs to be safer. When they talk to operators, they talk about this as a solution to the pilot shortage. Well, Airbus obviously isn't paying attention. We don't have a pilot shortage. You can talk to any major CEO, they've all said they have no problems getting pilots, there's no pilot shortage. You can talk to ALPA. Anybody that's looking at the data will tell you that we're creating record numbers. Every year we're breaking records on how many ATPs we have, how many pilots are in the system. So there is no pilot shortage. What the real reason is cost savings. They talk to operators and say, hey, you're not gonna have to pay as many pilots. That's the real reason why Airbus is doing this. It has nothing to do with safety, it has nothing to do with rest, it has to do with cost savings. And then when they talk to us, they talk about how this is not something you need to worry about. It's not a priority, okay? Back in 2022, I was in Washington, D.C. at the Aero Club. They have a monthly lunch. And the Airbus CEO was a guest. And he was asked specifically about RCO and their efforts, and he talked a little bit about it. And he said, really, listen, it's not a priority for us. We're not spending a lot of money. We're not spending a lot of time doing this. And he searched the room, and he found the ALPA table, and he looked right at us, and he said, we are not trying to take pilots out of the cockpit. I don't think he's reading his own notes, because that's exactly what they're doing. But you know, Airbus isn't the only company doing this. Some of you may have heard of Reliable Robotics. They started an airline early last year called Reliable Airlines. It's a 135, and they're flying 208s in the Southwest US for us. And the picture on the left is a picture I took at Oshkosh last year. And I'm gonna read the purple stripe for you, the purple banner part, because I know it's a bit of an eye test. It says, Reliable Airlines will be the first airline to implement safety-enhancing automation systems that will make aircraft safer and enable continuous autopilot engagement from parking spot to parking spot. Join the next evolution in aviation. So what are they doing? They're hiring safety pilots to prove their technology, and really not telling them. And if you're paying attention, Reliable Robotics remotely flew a Cessna Caravan a few months ago in December with not a soul on board, not even a safety pilot. So this work is continuing. I mentioned Collins and FedEx. They're working on pilot monitoring. Again, I'm not sure how they're going to do this. This is a photo from some of Colin's own information. How they're going to go about doing that, I don't know, but they're currently working on it with FedEx. And FedEx isn't the only company looking at this. Cathay Pacific and Singapore are both renewing their cargo fleets. Singapore, you can see there on the right, expects to be the first recipient of the A350 freighter, December 2025. First quarter 26, they plan on operating it, minimally manned. They expect to fly with no RFOs. Obviously, they're waiting on regulations, but that's their plan. So ALPA's identified 5 areas of influence, or 5 pillars when it comes to RCO. 5 areas where we can influence the outcome. We're not going to talk about all 5. I want to talk about that middle one, the pilots. That's why I'm here today. Starting a first small step in education, in educating our pilots, because we need you on board. There's nothing for you to do right now as far as outwardly, whether it be Congress or the FAA or something like that. We don't have an ask for you right now like that. The ask for you right now is get educated. We need you educated on the issue. I can't wait until we need something from you. We need your action, and then have you just realize that there's a problem. Okay, this is a real problem. And so we're trying to educate our pilots. And so a big takeaway for today is EMCO is single pilot operations. If you get nothing else, that'd be a great takeaway. Airbus hates this. Airbus hates this when we point this out because they talk about, oh, it was just minimally extended minimum crew operations. It's not a big deal. There's 2 pilots for takeoff and landing. But if you've got one guy in the back sleeping half the time, there's only one pilot in the cockpit. That is single pilot operations, okay? We've partnered with international partners, the International Federation of Airline Pilots, with the European Cockpit Association. Pictures of our white papers. They've just been updated because it's a changing landscape. And so our white paper was introduced last week. Jason Ambrosi spoke at the International Aero Club lunch, and he introduced our newest white paper. These are on our website, safetystartswith2.com. Safetystartswith2.com. Great repository of data, of information. Great place for you guys to start to get educated. And I would recommend that you also follow ALPA on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. National particularly is constantly posting articles, posting excerpts of speeches that our president, Jason Ambrosi, has given, maybe opportunities on panels that I've spoken on. It's a great way to keep up on what's going on in the industry. So education, I need you to be educated. The other thing I need you to do is join the pack, okay? ALPA PAC is the way we build relationships on Capitol Hill. This is where it's gonna end up, okay? And the time to make friends is not when you need friends, it's before you need friends, okay? And this is how we do that. And I know there's a lot of pushback to the PAC. Well, you know, you give to Nancy Pelosi. I don't like Nancy Pelosi. You give to Ted Cruz, and I like Ted Cruz. You're right, we give to both of them. We give to people on both sides of the aisle all the way to the middle because each one of them get a vote. And we don't care how they voted on taxes. We don't care how they voted on social issues. Now, I care personally, but I put that aside because that's not what we're here, that's not what this is about. This is about a pilot partisan agenda. This is about defending pilots' jobs. It's about defending the safety of our airspace. It's about safety and security. The best way, let me back that up. This is you can see this as job insurance. You know, our negotiating committee can negotiate the best contract in the world, and 6 months later, Congress can screw it up. They can take something away from us. They can change retirement rules. They can change who knows what. This is our insurance. So I recommend that we need much higher participation in the PAC. We're within 1 or 2 points every year of being 50-50. We're the most bipartisan labor PAC in the industry. Okay? So get educated and join the PAC. I've got swag, stickers, bag tags. Everybody likes swag. Come by and see me after the Joint Council meeting. Love to talk to you. Love to answer any of your questions. Thanks again, Bryan, for the time.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Really good to see so many familiar faces out there. My name is Sal Infante. I'm your chair of the Scope Committee. And I'd like to start by thanking everybody for the volume of darts that we're receiving in the Scope Committee lately. It's really encouraging to see people pay attention. And honestly, I like to tell the people I fly with, you know, the Scope Committee is not about me. It's not about the Scope Committee members. The Scope Committee is about all of us. And the way I see it, we're all Scope Committee members. And it's up to us to see what's happening out there, to report it, and hopefully with that, gather data and information and see where we can move from there. All right, so the Scope Committee members. Up to December of this year, maybe a little bit earlier than that, the Scope Committee was basically a committee tasked by the MEC to run scope penalty payment calculations, run by my friend and predecessor, who's right there, Randy, and still part of the committee. You know, there was not much to do for the committee, at least the MEC hadn't identified anything for the committee to do. Other than that, we were observing what was happening in Europe when he recruited me back in 2016. Obviously, after the failed TA and after survey data, we recognized that there's a lot of work ahead of us. So I was elected chair in December and started recruiting a very good team, which honestly is what makes the Scope Committee look good, makes me look good, and makes the MEC look good too. With that, I'd like to introduce Dan Silva, who's my vice chair. Where's Dan? Oh, right there hiding. Luis Quiroz, who will be giving you a presentation. He handles a lot of the comms that you read. And yeah, it's one of our SME. Dave Greco, who always likes to hide somewhere. Okay, good. Jeff Curry is not here. A lot of the darts are answered by him. And Ed Bradley, James Arena, Randy, and Alex Forsinski, who were still volunteers. I do want to thank the MEC because all these guys whose name I just read have been working for me since December for free. Long days, long hours for free. You know, when I hired them, I told them I'm going to try to get you paid one day. And finally, yesterday, thanks to the MEC, they unanimously voted to approve a budget that reflects our needs. The budget also includes educational campaign, many podcasts to come, videos, etc. So with that, I'm going to give it to Luis Quiroz, who's going to run you through a presentation. I'll be here for questions later. I'll also be at the Council 7 local council meeting, and we're going to have Luis on 22, and Dan on 26. All right.
Thanks, Sal.
Yep.
And thank you all for being here today and for your interest in Scope. Like Sal said, the volume of darts that we've been receiving has been very encouraging. Getting a lot of information on the line, lots of pictures. Every time we get a picture with an asset identifier or a CAN number, we can track its history. We can take a peek and see what's inside and what's going. And a lot of what the company has been telling the shareholders, we can validate that it's true. And you can see it in the picture here. European services provided by ASL Airlines. What more do we need than that? So let's first go over some quick definitions, like Bill mentioned earlier. Domestic, for the FedEx CBA 2015, domestic is anything that operates within the contiguous 48 states. There is some certain protections. The company can engage in 1B4, what we commonly call as belly freight, unless it's economically necessary or in order to expedite. International, and I have to apologize for this map because it does not show the territories, but international includes the United States, the 48 states, plus Alaska, plus Hawaii, plus a territory. So Hawaii, Guam, Puerto Rico, some of the islands in the Pacific. Those are considered international destinations, so we do have protections there. The big problem that we have is that 1B4 is as required. 1B4 belly freight. You're going to be hearing a lot about that. So what do we do is basically, our scope says that if flying has to be done in trunk aircraft, in the domestic or the international network, it must be performed by pilots on the master seniority list. Now, there's also something that's not defined in the CBA, which is the pure international or extraterritorial. And this is a big percentage of our flying. 777 pilots out here, over a third of your bid pack is purely international, never touches the United States or one of its territories. Globally, it's over 15% for the entire company. And what we saw in Europe is just one small blip of the entire operation. Our current CBA, as well as the failed 2023 CBA, did not include any provisions for extraterritorial flying. And we know from our peers at UPS, they do have some provisions, and so far, they have been able to successfully defend these provisions from any encroachment by management. So I mentioned trunk aircraft, but just to recap, any aircraft over 60,000 pounds that operates in the domestic or the international network must be flown by MSL pilots unless it's explicitly said otherwise in the CBA. So one of the biggest concerns that we do have right now is the threat of outsourcing. And outsourcing generally, and this is not just for FedEx, is not necessarily a bad thing. You know, if you think about why companies outsource, they do it because they want to prioritize their core functions. They want to start new markets. They want to have a lower startup cost. The problem is when we get to that last point, labor cost arbitrage. This is when you utilize outsourcing to obtain lower operational expenses by arbitraging better work rules internationally. Now, our job as trade unions is to protect the pilots and the flying that we conduct. There's usually a balance. When you start outsourcing, sometimes a startup doesn't justify doing it in-house. As you continue to increase the operation, there comes a tipping point when it's better to bring stuff in-house. What we've been seeing recently is the opposite. The company is shifting more and more and more of its flying to what they call global partner networks, commercial line haul. It's all euphemisms for outsourcing. And outsourcing in our current CBA can take many forms. You know, we have feeder flying. That's aircraft under 60,000 pounds. So the ATRs, the Cessnas, that sort of thing. The other issue that we have is the interline, co-load, code-share, part charter, block space. This is all the one before. We normally call it belly freight, but it's more than what you see being loaded on passenger airlines. We just put out a podcast yesterday where we talk about out of Honolulu. It started with an MD-11. It's now a 777. It's not only cargo being put on passenger airlines out of Honolulu and placed on strategic cities in the U.S. They're also utilizing pure freighters, buying capacity at Aloha Air Cargo, for example, to bring cargo to the mainland. And it's not just deferred, as they would tell the investors when they presented Tricolor. They're putting international priority freight in these other operators. So when you think about it, when you outsource, you're paying somebody else's capital cost. You're paying somebody else's labor cost. You're paying somebody else's operational cost and a profit margin. So the company is making decisions today to shift a significant portion of our flying to other companies. That's a real threat. Now, Sal mentioned earlier about wet leases. Wet leases can take many forms. What the intent of the clause for wet lease, 1B6, is to be a shock absorber. When there is a spike in demand, FedEx can quickly react by offering services utilizing third-party lift, wet leasing. And it's allowed in the contract, and there's limits, and then there's penalties for exceeding these limits. Also, 1B7 provides for certain exceptions on these penalties when there is a specific need. So if a shipment won't fit in an airplane, if there's not regulatory approval to operate that flight. But it's not intended to be a long-term solution. And what we witnessed during COVID was the company signing a 2 or 3 year deal with Atlas, can't remember the specific time frame, that just ended last year. So while we were in low BLGs, below minimum, they were still paying Atlas to operate flights on behalf of us. So this is till we reach where we are today. and this is an excerpt from the FedEx presentation to shareholders on Tricolor. Publicly, the company is telling their shareholders that they will not engage in significant capital expenditures until at least fiscal year 26. So they are publicly telling their shareholders that new markets will be exploited utilizing what they call their white network, their global partner network, commercial line haul. This just means outsourcing. They've told us that they want us flying the purple and the orange freight. But so far, we have detected what the company would call purple freight, orange freight, being shifted to these global network partners. We've seen a significant reduction in flying in India and the Middle East, a significant increase in the use of partners, signing co-load and block space agreement with Middle Eastern airlines, with Asian airlines, and the full outsourcing of the Bengaluru to Dubai route to an Indian low-cost carrier that has a converted Airbus freighter. These are practices that are not stopping. It did not stop with just Europe, like we saw in the first slide. Europe started, and somebody sent us a dart and I think posted about how Paris started with only a few 737s, and today that's all you see when you fly into Paris. Well, now we're starting to see the same thing in Asia. We're starting to see the same thing in the Middle East. So our challenge as a scope committee is keeping track of all of these changes, of all of these network changes, and keeping the company honest and demanding to be included and to be and to inform the MEC, to inform the negotiating committee of what's going on, and to provide a better picture for all of our pilots. Because at the end of the day, we want to be a part of FedEx's success story. So we will, as Sal mentioned, we will be at the council taking any questions that you might have. Dan will be in Council 26, I'll be in 22, Sal will be in 7. So, and we'll also be at the pub event, so if you guys have any questions related to these scope concerns, we'll be glad to take them.
Hi, I'm Rob Bassett, Fatigue Risk Management Chairman, here to talk about fatigue. As I say, it's not exciting material, and if I could make a t-shirt that says no one is politically correct, cares about fatigue unless they're fatigued. So who here has flown fatigue? Thank you for being honest. Who here has called out fatigue? Awesome. Who here has filed a company fatigue report? Oh, this is easy. Getting your exercise. We'll go with the left hand. Who here has filed a union dart? All right, good. That matters. You're here, you're listening, you've called in fatigue, called out fatigue. I could say I'm done, and that would save time. I got plenty. Oh, I still got a couple minutes. Fatigue output information. Bill talked about it. It's about education. I hate saying use the education word to say, hey, I'm here to educate you or re-educate you. It's more about being informed. Again, no one really cares about fatigue unless they're fatigued, and it's going to happen to you. Most of you raised your hand, have flown fatigue, have an issue with fatigue. Schedules are getting tighter. We're becoming more efficiency. Like Jose said, they're chasing the money, cost and reliability. Who's the safety expert? Who stops that chasing that we get every night? You. Where's this information? On the PFC content locker, on my website. I'm going to plug that again. Pocket calendar. Anybody look at the green pages for there? It's 2 pages of good fatigue information. My small committee is myself, my vice chair, Dave over there, similar last names, that's uncanny. Mike Murphy is our data compiler. He works the biomathematical models. 90% of our work is administrative and operational. Very busy. But our focus is your health and well-being. That's the union. Jose talked about it. Bill's talked about it. There's synchronicity throughout all the committees, and we work with every committee really close with SIG, but we work with PATH. We work with everyone across the table for your benefit, your health, and your well-being. What is fatigue? It's very personal. I go, every person in this room, or just grab 3 of us, and each of us will have a different sleep regime, a different plan for hub turns. It's very generalized. It's hard to be specific when we do planning and say, make a recommendation, because if I make a recommendation to Tim, it's going to be different than making a recommendation to Chris. It's different fine. We're different people. Caffeine usage. I mean, goodness gracious, I could spend my 12 minutes just talking about caffeine usage. But I want you to pay attention to MOPS. Fatigue is a symptom. It could be of mental issues. And that's really big in our industry today. We're very involved with that because that is a subjective that's trying to turn very objective, and we're working with the team there. Operational, got the asterisks. That's where 90% of my time is, our time is spent. Personal, finance, physical, social. Bryan read off those names. Several of those pilots had fatigue issues. Very busy slide here. Just really important, want to point out, worked with NASA to put this together, but this is talking about personal factors affecting fatigue. That's you. Just note here, I've put this on my website, fedexalpha.org. So if you want to get in there and kind of look at this, it's there right now, available for you. But the point is, personal factors affecting fatigue, cognitive impairment. That's different than being tired. All right? Pretty much when we show up at the hub at 2 a.m., we're tired. But are we cognitively impaired that we're going to make these mistakes, we're going to take risks, we're going to failure to communicate? That's where you come in to make that assessment. Operational threats, that's where I spend a lot of my time, trying to reduce these, causing circadian disruption. That hurts. Acute sleep loss, workload. Workload for you is different than workload for you. It is different, it affects you, but it causes fatigue and it causes cognitive impairment. Operational administrative work, the 90% of our time is spent on the build, biomathematical models. Company has theirs, we have ours. We compare those. We work with the build every month. A lot of our time is working with Marty and his team, the SIG and the PSIT, to put together a schedule that meets the acceptable level of risk agreed upon between us and company. But like Jose said, they're chasing the money, they're chasing the reliability, we're pushing back with safety. Reports, data collection, DCSC, systemic fixes, parameters that we create. GMDAT Pilot Fatigue Working Group. Bill talked about the legislative side of things going on. In the fatigue world, in the regulation world, does anybody know how long ago 117 was implemented? How long ago 121 was implemented? Yes, about that age of that child back there is when that was implemented. I know, so just to let you know, I'm trying to be politically correct up here. Education, articles, podcasts, award-winning PowerPoints. Company versus union. Again, back to Jose. Cost and reliability versus safety. You. Acceptable level of risk. One of my least favorite phrases. Your level of acceptable risk is different than your acceptable level of risk. That's much different than the company's acceptable level of risk. Who here has had 10 revisions from CRS and you're stuck somewhere and you don't know what to do? And you're on the other side of the world. Hey, it's legal. Yeah? Should I accept it? Up to you. Efficiency and ability. FCIF, see the companies pushing out FCIFs? I'm pushing out articles. Links to those are on my website. One of the big things I'm pushing is recognizing fatigue. This checklist is available on, foreshadowing here, the SIG app. It's also on PFC. It's also on my website front page. Current issues in focus. Sleep rooms. Who here has not gotten a sleep room during a hub turn in Memphis? Boo. All right? What are your options? Suck it up, Buttercup? No. If that affects your ability to operate, you call that fatigue. There are recliners available behind the, like the secret door that goes beyond the coffee machines. We know how quiet those are, not really. Maybe you can use Oslo, right, Tom? To help you sleep better. 24-hour turns. This is very much on our radar. How easy is a 24-hour turn? Indy, manageable. Dubai, not so much. Fatigue callouts, karma checklist, big issue a couple weeks ago where that was not followed by company or the duty officer, and the first officer was left on their own without crew transportation, without a hotel, without deadhead back after his trip was terminated when they called out fatigue. I want to say earmuffs, that's BS. That's not how we're supposed to operate. And when is the worst time that you're supposed to make logistic decisions? When you're fatigued, I can't operate. Oh, now I have to find a hotel in Tulsa and ground transportation? I'm waxed, I'm fried, I can't do that. Data collection. Who here has worn the actigraph and gathered data, turned in a sleep log, helping us gather data to either verify that trip is at the acceptable level of risk or not? Systemic fixes, sleep kits, sleep kits, Anchorage. We got issues up there right now. Education, info sharing, and culture. Culture is huge. I'm old enough to know that before sleep rooms and toughing it out, that doesn't happen. That shouldn't happen anymore. Our culture is about normalizing fatigue calls. RB flying turned into RA, land at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, and they say, hey, you're released for rest. Check-ins at 1:15 a.m. Legal? Yes. Smart? Hell no. Up to you to see if you can get rest. Hotel noise and interruptions. Again, Oslo, white noise, sleep buds, ways to combat that. But if it disrupts your ability to get scheduled rest, what's your option? Fatigue call. Good. Fatigue months. All right, little data here. It's going up a lot. So 2017 years ago, it was about 10 to 15 per month. Now we're up to over 45 per month. What's the data on that? What's the analysis? What's the metrics on that? Does that mean I'm doing a great job of, informing you of your options? Possibly. Schedule's getting harder? Possibly. Process is getting easier? Possibly. All these go together to say we need more fatigue calls. Now, for the record, I'm not asking you to call it fatigue. I'm asking you to not fly fatigue. That is very different when you think about it. How many pilots do you think we have every night flying fatigue? Remember that slide? Cognitively impaired, not able to help the other crew member, missing radio calls, right through that checklist. A lot. Why do I know this? Because I get a fatigue report that says I should have called out fatigued. I have thousands of those. I've walked into air ops and go, here you go, here's 1,000 reports that say I should have called out fatigue. When this person called out fatigue, they're saving the company's bacon. That's cost and reliability right there. Revisions. Who here has been revised? No, never mind, don't raise your hands. Everyone's been revised, all right? We have been. This is what's interesting. A couple months ago, I went to a company and said, hey, your number one cause of fatigue calls is revisions. Can you give me some data on that? What do you mean data? I'm like, yeah, why is this happening? So 20 to 22, that was during COVID, but notice in 2024, 4,500 revisions per month. Let's do the math. How many is that per day? 150, okay? 150 revisions a day. Now, some of those are like, hey, I'm changing your hotel, I'm changing your ground transportation. No, I'm adding 2 legs outbound when you land tonight during a hub turn. Again, boo. So I asked the company to do a revision analysis, and it came back, their perception of that wasn't even close. The bottom one here, not the very bottom, but 1 day prior after check-in, 1,841 out of 2,743, 67% of revisions were operational. The rest were administrative. So 67%, that's on the company. That is wheeling and dealing, now, hey, I want FedEx to be successful as the next person, but not at my health risk, not pushing me beyond my limits. I don't like flying at night. Why are you at FedEx? All right. I don't like it, I can do it, but then you make changes that makes it harder, I'm out. Calling out fatigue. And this is just for the last year. June was more than that, and July, I think we're already at 25. So keep up the good work. Fatigue. I'm busy, like I said, we're busy 90% of the time working on the administrative, but when I get the phone call, I get the text, I get the email from the one pilot, and I help that pilot make a decision about calling out fatigue or not calling out fatigue, I help you. I help everyone. One pilot, I'll take at a time, and that one pilot makes a positive difference, and we move as a team to get to a better place, as you saw back in only as far back as 2017. Already talked about don't fly versus call out, education versus awareness, sleep hygiene. I could take the next hour on that. Follow me on Twitter. I can? Ah, sweet. What moves the needle? Reports. You taking the time. I know it's a PETA, pain in the rear, to fill out a report. And we put out an article about filing reports. I need one for company because they need the data. It helps me work with company, but I also need a DART to recognize and create accountability. On that DART, guess who's also CC'd? Your block rep. That creates accountability. Bryan reaches out to me. Chris reaches out to me. Tim reaches out to me like, hey, what's the deal with this fatigue report? Accountability. That's what this is about. Punitive? Not at all. I'm the one that kind of steps in if there's any problems. I already talked about that. Recent fatigue calls, you can read that online, but most of those are the Reserve B to a Reserve A legal rest fund. Apps we got going on, we have the Hound app, and that's a app I'll go over to real quick, and then the SIG app. Faster, funnier. This is a graphic representation, that's a biomathematical model of the Tulsa incident. I want you to look at the very bottom there where it bottoms out. That's where, on that dotted line, that's where the crew made a mistake. That was the lowest point of alertness. So after that Tulsa incident, we decided to put together, there's some help. Where that? Who here's in the 767? Memphis? Anybody bid this line? 1313? Oh, awesome. Okay. Fantastic. The bottom of that, where the least effective point is on that Friday, and on the graph it shows that. And what we've done is to say, okay, let's give you the tool to recognize that. So we've worked with the company to create a very intense description, but you'll look to see the color changes and know that on the 16th, landing in JFK, you'll be at your lowest based on this predicted sleep. And this is on the website. I'm over time. This is the SIG app that Marty and his team are put together. There's a whole fatigue side, pretty exciting. Pretty much everything is there that I just discussed. It's on the website. Personal assessment, recognizing fatigue, calling out fatigue or calling in fatigue, the process, trip removal due to fatigue, kind of just there summarizing. On my website is more. Here's the articles. They're on my website right now. They're just dated format, but I'm trying to create the names for them to go back for. One of the most looked at articles was the culture versus regulation. One of the least ones up there, I think, had, Courtney will quote me, was 56 hits, so wasn't well read. Takeaways on there, just what we had there, and here's a link to my website. If you click on it, it's there. Thank you.
We tried to set up this joint council meeting in a certain fashion. If you've noticed through Marty's speech, through Jose's, no, not Marty, sorry, Rob's speech, through Jose's, Bill's, the scope committee, the company is changing. The landscape is changing. That affects us from top to bottom. It's our day-to-day lives and it's our careers, okay? So please listen to what he's saying. Rob, these fatiguing schedules are continuing to increase. We really need you guys to assess your fitness for duty and make sure that you guys are flying safe. That's first and foremost. Engage with the system, engage with us, with ALPA, and that leads us into the professional standards here. So this is all geared towards company changes. Please keep stuff internal, keep it to us. If you have problems, don't post on jet flyers. Don't go out and put far things out there that could be misconstrued by the company. Engage with us. We will do that bidding for you. Engage with the fatigue reports, with the ASAP reports, and then if you have a problem with your crew members, this is or with fellow crew members, this is what Nick's going to talk about. Please engage the Professional Standards Committee before you go to the company. So I just wanted to put that foot stomper out there. These changes are done by the company, and we are here for you. So.
But I'm Nick Richardson with Professional Standards. With me, my vice chair is Taylor Mylan. I'm going to take about 5 to 10 minutes to tell you a little bit about the Professional Standards Committee and what we do. ProStan is a group of volunteers that have been trained in mediation and conflict resolution to help you. When you call Professional Standards, you're going to get someone on the end of the phone that's going to listen to you, that's going to try and come up with a solution, choose the best path forward with you. If after a trip you feel like you weren't able to debrief something and you need to address that individual, maybe take 24 or 48 hours and think about it, wind down a little bit, and then think about giving that individual a call. If you think that's not an option, then pick up the phone and call Professional Standards. We're going to enter into a confidentiality agreement with you. What that confidentiality agreement is we're not going to talk about your matters with anyone else, nor do we want you talking to other people about these matters. If we keep it between ourselves, we're going to come up with the best solution. If you tell your peers about what's going on, or you post about it online, or you call someone else, they're only getting a little bit of the information. They're not getting all of the information. That's going to leave the rest of the story up for speculation, and that's how rumors are started. And that's what we don't want. We want to work it out between ourselves, right? So what we're saying is try Professional Standards first. If you have something that's going on and you don't feel like you can address this individual, call us to help. And we'll be able to find a path to that solution, find something to do. If you can't, you can always step it up later. But going directly to management or calling the duty officer, calling the chief pilot, or calling someone else first, we do have a letter of agreement with the company and they can step things down to us. But our preferred model is that you contact us first, and then we can try and work out these resolutions however we can. Which brings me to one thing that I want to talk about, social media. This is a hot topic, and we've been figuring out how to address this. How do we address the social media issues that are coming up? First of all, Professional Standards is not the social media police. We don't monitor any of the forums that everyone is posting on. Okay, we do get some calls about them. Some of the cases we are able to take, some of the cases we are not able to take. So part of the Professional Standards model is that you agree to insert yourself in the conflict. So we don't take anonymous phone calls. We need everyone to insert themselves in the conflict to come up with the best resolution. Guys, when you post online, things stay around forever. If you're emotional, and you go in and you post something online, you decide you want to delete it maybe a day later, it's probably been screenshotted. And that individual may not agree with you, and they may send it to someone, and then now we have something that is escalated into something that it's not, right? So before you get emotional and post something online, call us. Let us try and work out your resolution. With our confidentiality agreement, we're not going to discuss these matters with anyone, right? But you and the other person involved. And we're going to come up to a resolution, or at least try and find a solution for you, right? There's several ways to contact Professional Standards. We have a hotline, 866-FDX-ALPA, option 6. And all of our reps monitor this phone number, or you can also call them directly. You can go to fdxalpa.org, go to our committees, look at Professional Standards, and you're going to find a list of seat and fleet type and their personal cell phone number where you can also call them. You can also submit a DART, or you can see, I don't have my lanyard on, but we have Professional Standards lanyards that all of our reps are going to be wearing, and also lanyard backers to talk to us. So the message I'm portraying today, our hot topic with Professional Standards, is social media. And we do need to find out how to mitigate this, all right? Before you get emotional, before you post online, call Professional Standards rep. There's several phone calls that we take, And sometimes it just feels good to unload, right? After 10 to 15 minutes, we talk, hey, what can I do for you now? A lot of times we get, hey, I just needed someone else to know. I just needed to talk. That's going to stay confidential between you and a professional standards rep. And it's going to feel good to get that off, just like you would go online and post. But instead, you're keeping it with a confidential agreement with your pro stand rep, and it's not going to get out to the rest of the world and be perceived in the wrong way.